to the YouTube channel also, please. Um, the conversation. I remember I did an episode before, and I mentioned the culture. We're talking about the culture, which is the music, the food, the energy, the people, right? I was talking about the culture, and then I ended up saying a part of the culture too is violence, and a part of the culture is violence toward our women, right? Sexual abuse is part of the culture. Let's just call it what it is. For all those people who grew up in Jamaica, some people now go on, they'll turn a blind eye right now because they probably are part of the problem, right? But how many times growing up as a kid you've seen little high school girls being preyed upon by the older men, the bus driver, them, some big policeman, some man in the community that's too much older, 20 years older, 30 years older. And a lot of time parents turn a blind eye. When I say parents, mostly mama. You know what I mean? And I understand when it comes to economics, I understand poverty and I understand all them things, but it ain't always from places where, you know, they're inflicted with poverty and it's poverty stricken and all them things. No, it's not always that. A lot of times there's some things to be gained in there from mom by mom and she allows it. And you have the single parent households and you know, she need help. Sometimes it's a normalized culture too, to where that happened to her and she ain't see the wrong in it. She's all right. So she prefers the concept of daughter messing with that person than messing with a young boy, because if young boy get her knocked up, what can he do? We've heard all them things. We've heard all them things, right? So I mentioned the fact that that's a part of the culture, right? A part of the culture. Well, go on, Hensel. Large up the Massive and crew over there in Denmark right now. You know what I mean? Big up the Massive and crew in Holland also, Sweden, everybody locked in. And I mentioned that, and somebody hit me up in my DMs and they were a little mad because they were saying, why am I presenting the culture as being violent and so forth? And I'm like, but ain't it? Isn't it? Growing up, for those people who, we're being honest right now, grew up, and it's not a Jamaica thing, it's a Caribbean thing, but right now we're talking about Jamaica just because that's what's the headlines on right now. That's what's on the headlines right now. Now, don't we see, haven't we seen violence as a part of the culture growing up, right? And I'm not talking about the crime sprees. We're not talking about criminals and crime sprees. We're just talking about the fact that it was just so easy to resort to violence a lot of times, right? Easy to resort to violence. A lot of times something happening, you can almost predict what's going to happen. Some cutlass are going to come out. This is way before everybody had a gun, right? Cutlass are going to come out. Things are going to happen. And then we see time progress and it's gotten worse, right? And people are still searching for answers as to why, while ignoring the fact that it's a culture that's been curated and a culture that we have pretty much propagated over these years. And everybody tries to find somebody to blame, right? And right now, people point finger on government more than anything else. We're pointing finger on greed and all them things. Like there's a comment here, Edward said, yes, to the question, do we have a violent culture? Several factors, yet I point out this major one. Young women should stop taking expensive gifts and large sums of money from older men and then call them sugar daddy, and the population accept and mock these men. It's the main factor in domestic disputes and need to be addressed by the government and by the law. Now, let's chop that up. Young women, old women, men, everybody need to stop exploiting people for their own personal gain. Because we always talk about the fact that we have these young women soliciting stuff from the older men, the sugar daddies, as you say, and then it becomes an issue later on. But to be honest with you, we are also in a time, and I see it, where men now are almost taking over that driver's seat trying to find sugar mamas. A lot of men now are trying to find, especially young men, are trying to find women to take care of them. So when they exploit the women and take their things, we don't hear that much about the women chopping up people and chop off head and this and that and whatever the case may be. And I'm only saying that to say, while I agree, I want to take the gender out of it, right? The whole young women thing, because men do it too, right? But women aren't running around chopping up men and doing a lot of violence. And again, I want to sum up that thing by saying, while that may be a cause of that particular incident, what it really is the identifiable cause. It's what we want to deem the catalyst, right? But the truth of the matter is, that person who did that was capable of that, right? The person who's going around and kill people and hurt people, he's capable of that. So while that might have been what triggered him to do that to a woman where you claim say you love and you this and that, what would you do to another man in the community that you don't love, that is just, you have a confrontation or whatever the case may be? The violence and is part of that culture and that person. Most people who get up and do acts like those is not a snap thing. It's not a we snap kind of vibe. I don't believe that. Right? Now we also say we're looking for the government. What do the government, what are they gonna do? I agree, government have to figure something out. But here's the thing now, the double-edged sword with that is that whenever the government decides to do something, we see right now with the corona and all that stuff, and that's a job I wouldn't want to have right now. But we see the government come out and say, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're gonna lock down this, we're gonna lock down that. Half the nation is opposed to it and they're upset and they're up in arms because the government is now trying to do something, right? Whether right, wrong, indifferent, whether they agree with it, because every action that somebody does, it's how it affects you, right? I have somebody up here who complaining about the impact on tourism and their mother and aunt and grandmother not being able to survive because it's tourism. When the truth is, it was just an excuse because neither his mother, aunt, or grandmother works in tourism, right? So they weren't really affected by it. But as people outside in the diaspora, sometimes we really want to interject our opinions, especially when we come from a place where political affiliation is major, is huge, right? So a lot of the things that we oppose because one prime minister do it, we're really opposing it because it's not the party that we're aligned with, right? But at the end of the day, we will say we need the government to step in. But the truth is, we also want to dictate and regulate how the government steps in. Because it comes off the slip of the tongue, government step in. But we see a whole lot of other times when government step in, because we can't control how they step in, right? And we don't want that. We say, step in, government, what you going to do? But we don't want it when they do step in. Then we talk about music now. Is it the music? We try to ban the gun lyrics. And is it art imitating life? Is it life now imitating art? I think it's something of both. You know what I mean? From a creative standpoint, it used to be art imitating life. But right about now, people are making up stuff, putting it in music, taking stuff from film, putting it in music, taking stuff from their personal situations, putting it in music. And it does have an influence whether they want to believe it or not. Right? Neril says, we don't have a violent culture. We are some of the nicest people on earth. However, there is a violent faction that is corrupting our island and our good name. They need to be rooted out ASAP. That's what Neril says. I hear you. Okay. I've seen a violent culture. So that's I will say that I think we do. I think what happens though is we are a very patriotic people. We love our island home. And we hurt when people refer to it as anything other than beautiful, anything other than the land of wood and water, anything other than the land of jerk chicken, anything other than the land of Bob Marley, anything other than the land of the beautiful beaches, anything other than the land of reggae and the reggae boys, anything other than where Sean Paul come from, anything other than where the great Usain Bolt come from, anything other than those things, we don't really like it. Right? We don't really like it. We're a patriotic people. We love, we're very prideful people also. And I don't like the fact that it is branded a certain way. I remember being in the cruise industry, right? Sales and marketing for multiple major cruise lines. And we're doing itineraries, and the itinerary goes to like a Mexico, Jamaica, Grand Cayman, wherever. And I'd hear people say, oh, it's going to Mexico? It's going to Jamaica? Nah, I don't want to go there. And I'm like, why? Well, it's violent, man. I don't like that violence or whatever the case may be. And I'm like, where you from? Chicago. Where you from? Detroit. Where you from? Baltimore. You're talking about, where you from? Miami. It's how you paint things. I understand that, right? Because to be honest with you, a lot of times in major cities in the U.S., there are more people dying per day than in the entire island of Jamaica, right? But it's reported per capita, so it's a major difference. You're talking about one size versus a country that can fit into one country a million times. Of course, they're going to have more crime. Of course, they're going to have more, but we refer to it as per capita. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a damn shame when you see the murder rate at home. But it's a hard pill to swallow because we're a patriotic people, we're a prideful people, and we don't want our island home. We don't want the name desecrated, right? We want it to be uplifted, and we want it to be the place we grew up. And when I say the place we grew up, I don't want to speak of it geographically. I want to speak of it figuratively, because here's what happened. I grew up in Ocho Rios, Jamaica, right? And I grew up beach town. Everything is cool. Everything is nice. It never means that some terrible things then are going on in some other places. Some other places that I wasn't paying attention to. As a little kid, I'm not necessarily watching the news. You only hear of the major stuff. The Andem, the Natimagans, the this. You hear about that stuff. And a one person get killed here or there or whatever. Right? But truth be told, you were living in a place in your mind. You were protected from certain things. You're running up and down and playing. And yes, it wasn't commonplace for children and this and that to be affected a certain way, right? But if you talk to some old people right about now, and they mention to you, say, yeah, I'd lost my cousin way back in the day. What happened? Gunman killed him. How old was he? 10. And you said to yourself, damn, well, I thought this was brand new. I thought this just started happening. You know what I mean? Edwards also said maybe creepy old men should stop giving expensive gifts and money and to young women. It's amazing that you think this is all on the women. Somebody, Will replied with that. I appreciate that response because, to be honest with you, it does point the finger on the women and say, oh, it's the women's fault. Hear what happened now. Truth be told, women have been victims of abuse in Jamaica for a long time. Women have not been safe in Jamaica for a long time. From me born and I grew up, right? You see a lot of situations where it's almost normal. Every other woman you talked of encountered some form of sexual abuse, right? Or domestic abuse at the hands of the man in the yard, right? The man in the household, whatever the case may be, right? And the truth is, a lot of times when that was going on, that relationship and that marriage lasted years. They grew old and died together. If you talk to grandpa, whatever the case may be, grandpa and grandma, you see the relationship between them. But if you talk to one of the kids, when them tell you how grandpa used to stay, you would never believe a year grandpa used to do them something there, right? But at the end of the day, the gifts and the this and the that is what somebody uses. The ego, if you will, is what somebody uses to justify what they're doing. But at the end of the day, there has been a violent culture. How many people can say they have never seen any act of violence multiple times when they're growing up? If it's not in your household, it's somewhere else. Right? I grew up never seen any form of violence in my household. Never seen any form of violence in the house in front of me. Never seen none in the house diagonally. But it happened 4 houses up. Right? It happened 4 houses behind. I say this because I believe in drawing the stats from my immediate surroundings. You know what I mean? Sometimes we draw these crazy stats that are reported to us. Let's draw stats from within our eyesight, what we can see. How many people can say they haven't seen it, but we don't want to talk about it because it ain't cool. It's not a good look. We got to do better. And sometimes people are drawing at straws. You know what I mean? What are we going to do? Who's responsible? Here what no. Yes, the music is an issue. I'm not telling no lie. Now, when it comes to censorship and so forth, I don't know about censoring artists because then you're going down a rabbit hole and you open Pandora's box and you're talking about censoring people. So now you put it in a position where if the person is trying to affect change, but the people who are in a position to censor don't like the change, then they have the capability to censor. And that I got a problem with. But at the end of the day, certain lyrics not for outer road. Now, if you want, go record it in your studio, you want, send it to somebody and you want to do something, it's fine. Shouldn't be on the radio. Period. Shouldn't be on the radio, right? Shouldn't be played in cars and buses and stuff like that where people are involved. Because here's what the issue is when it comes to the censorship thing, is that a lot of things aren't necessarily derogatory, you know. what they are not age appropriate. So what happens pretty much is you have some people who are older and they can decipher what is entertainment and what is not. They can also, determine what they're going to be influenced by and what they're not, right? But then you have the younger folks now who are introduced to this stuff too early. It's no different from alcohol, and some people. Nobody knows nothing wrong with having a glass of wine, right? Nobody knows nothing having with having a drink at dinner for adult people, right? But do you crack a beer open and give it to your 5-year-old? Some people don't see anything wrong with smoking cigarettes or weed or whatever the case may be. They're smokers. They consider themselves smokers, right? It ain't illegal. But do you pass? It's a cigarette, you pass your spliff to your 5-year-old? Your 7-year-old, your 10-year-old, whatever the case may be? No, you don't. So certain things aren't age appropriate. And then you have the younger people soaking this stuff in. So now they get cultured for a certain thing from a young age. And they grow up seeing stuff. But because it's also glorified, because the problem too is the imbalance. Because while somebody's going to get up on stage and write a song and say, shut out him, head back, kill him, chop him up, whatever the case may be, you don't hear somebody singing a song and say, don't do that. That is nonsense. That is garbage. That is crap. How often we talk about what is art and what is not. Listen to Junior Gang Gunman World. That's a story depicting what happens in a gunman's world, right? Sounds graphic and the whole nine, but it's a story and it actually tells you what's going on. Versus you saying, I'ma do this. Me the artist, me the big artist, look how I'm popular, whatever the case may be, me a bad man, me a shoot and kill people. You're sending the wrong message. So I got a gripe with the lyrics. I'm just saying. Andrew, what's going on? Jasmine, what's popping? You know what I mean? So the exploitation thing, it's got to stop. But right now, if you do the math, if you sit back and you start asking people who you know, men are seeking things from women way more now in this 2021 than women seeking stuff from men. And when the man use the woman and take her things, we're not seeing a killing a go on. Because half of the thing when we talk about the violence in the culture, right, is that whole mindset of me have to get her. Me have to get her. We don't deal with rejection. So me see a girl and me like the girl and me reach out to her, respond to her, and she respond accordingly. It's not the energy is not reciprocated. Suppose the woman have a man and she's just a good girl. Suppose she just focus on something else in her life and she just don't want a man. Suppose she just not like you. You understand me? Is something wrong with that? But all of a sudden now, oh, that's a problem. And how I know it's a problem is because then you see the response change. That's not a Jamaican thing doing it, because we saw something happen in New York the other day where they almost killed a woman for the same thing. It's just some people who need to get their asses whooped. That's just me. I'm just saying. Right? So you reach out to the lady and she don't respond the way you want to. You mad? To the point now where you're going to ill-treat the woman? You're going to propose violence to her? I hear people say all the time we need to protect our women. And we do need to do so. I'm not suggesting any violence or anything out there, but I'm not looking straight in the camera. So why you're here? You don't understand me? I make no eye contact. The views expressed by G. Cole does not represent those of Jamaicans.com or even Homegrown with G. Cole. I'm going rogue. You see all of the so-called bad man, them and thuggies and gangsters, them will say them live by a certain code and we're not killing one another. How about you find a rapist then? How about you find that the people who are abusive to our women and children? You remember back in the day when bombs could go off outside, guns and everything, shoot out, but it could never enter into the walls of the church because we had, and it doesn't matter what your religious affiliation is and your religious beliefs are. It's not about Christian or whatever the case may be, but it just wouldn't. It wouldn't make its way into your place of worship and your place of fellowship, right? No, in the meantime, man, I wouldn't sit and go to the road and wait by you. I said, when we catch him tomorrow. But it just wouldn't make its way in there because there's some form of respect, right? Some form of sacrament burning within us that would make us not do certain things. Nancy says, that's how Peter says, real talk. As elder growing up in the 60s, you hit it out the park. I grew up in Kingston 12 and it was normal. You see it? Honesty is honesty, you know. Because here's the reality of it. Most time when people defend the thing and say it's not true, they're defending the brand, right? The problem with that is it's no different right now when we talk about police officers seeing things going on and acting like they don't see it and say them don't see it because they're protecting the badge and a blue wall in the institution. It's the same thing. It's no different from when racist people see other people do racist things and then don't say nothing because it's not a good look on my people, so I don't say anything. You know, if we don't say anything and we don't acknowledge it, it will not change. It gets worse. Nancy says we do have a violent culture. We respond to dispute with threats. I tell you, threats are one thing, you know. I wish it was just threats. You know, because we're at a point where if somebody threatens you, you best believe that you need to do something because I'm serious. Right? Alfred says, plus as Bill Withers said, use me to use you as long as no one gets exploited. Lyricism at its finest. The government is a part of the problem. They can't portion all the blame to the dancehall DJs. They cannot. They cannot. But see, the problem is, Nancy, they don't want to take any of the blame. You see, you're saying you can't put all of the blame on them. You cannot. But nobody don't want to take the blame. We can't put all of the blame on government. We can't put all of the blame on corrupt police. We can't put all of the blame on the artists. We can't put all of the blame on radio, right? But nobody no want to take none of the blame. Everybody says, nah, it ain't me. It ain't me. It's him. Right? The prime minister has a lot of bad egg in the team. Trust me. You know, one time somebody mentioned that eradication is the only cure for certain things. While it's not a good outlook, there's truth to it. Because sometimes your new leaders are just the new face. They're following what the old leaders are you know, instructing them to do. So sometimes I have to start from the, you know, and we're a culture also that focus on the fruit, you know. What is wrong with this apple right here? Why does apple stay so? No, but we don't want to focus on the root. We don't want to focus on the tree. We don't want to focus on none of that. Let's just focus on this fruit. And the fruit tastes the same way. Kadeen says, I spoke about this recently on a forum. I definitely agree that our culture breeds violence. I believe it started with our upbringing. We are aggressive as people, and I think it started from beating every day for everything as children. You're still vexed, not true, but you're vexed, though. You're vexed. It started from beating every day. If everything as children, it was embedded in us, the approach that we use to resolve all things with aggression. We suppress our children. Had a conversation about that yesterday also. For shut up and sit down. So we lack the ability to effectively communicate. So we can't resolve differences through communication. Corruption is also a factor. The policeman them who call down a station, so the information Infomentality cultivates silence and breeds crime. The politicians, some, she says, I like that, specify, provide the guns. We cannot import guns. You're absolutely right. They're not coming that easy. Do people import guns? Yes, they do. But 9 times out of 10, you gotta have a hookup to get that done, right? Our music needs to be cleaned up. Dancehall has a great impact on our culture. So true. I like all of that. Making crazy sense. You're making sense right there. It's a truth we're afraid of and ashamed of. Eileen, boom. I ate that. Pride. We're afraid to acknowledge certain things because it's not a good look. It's no different from, I mention Sugar all the time because I had a conversation with Sugar, dope songstress, right? And she mentioned, since people get raped every day, people getting killed every day, but yet still nobody knows a rapist. Nobody knows a rapist. Nobody knows a killer. Nobody knows a burglar. But yet still burglaries are committed every day. Rapes are committed every day. Killings are committed every day. Because the people who know it now say nothing. Some people are afraid. Some people receive rewards from the bounty, right? Some people, you got mamas out there who ain't saying nothing about them son because guess what? That keep mama in a Benz, right? And at the end of the day, that's her child, and the pride comes into play too. If word gets out that her child's a criminal, it's not a good look on her because people start questioning her parenting. Not true. Katie said violence all over the world. One song, writer, a song, gospel song, troubled world. You're right. Gwendolyn. Yes, unfortunately, our culture is now dripping in violence. Disgusting, good for nothing. Older men are chasing, raping, impregnating, even murdering our school children and young women. Also, their feeble, fragile mind cannot take women rejecting their advances. That's gospel right there. Or ending an abusive, controlling relationship. So they resort to the most despicable act of violence. I heard a voice note the other day. I don't know how credible it is, but I heard a voice note the other day. And it was a man on the line telling a woman. It wasn't a voice note. It was a phone call that she recorded. On the line telling the woman that she left him, so he's going to kill her. She's in Ocho Rios and he's in Spanish Town, and no matter what, she got dead. And no matter how the crazy part of it that made me say, wow, is it wasn't a heated conversation. It sounded like a pretty docile, a pretty controlled dialogue between two people. Nobody now shout, nobody now scream. I don't think I heard maybe one or two words of profanity, but it wasn't levied at each other. It was just a part of the communication. So smooth, so cool, so calm, collected, threatening, telling the person, "Me, I gotta kill you," because she left him. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Weak man do them thing. They're not true, Peter. So I said, it's much more violent than it used to be. This new generation don't give a F about nobody. That is so true. That is so true. But they're also repeating a culture, what them say, right? What people do is this. We take what we get from our forefathers and we build on it, right? So they're taking what they've gotten and they are building upon it. Paul says the nature of crime in Jamaica is such that it tells us something about Jamaicans and the Jamaican society. That is, the violence is symptomatic. It gives off something going wrong deep down in the social structure, right? The solution, let me scroll down a bit. The solution must come to grips with the social issues that give rise to the violence in Jamaica. And I guess that was coined by Noel Severa in 1972. Here's the thing. You know why I know for a fact that we are a violent culture, whether we want to admit it or not? Have you ever gone out and seen an altercation here or whichever country you live in with some of the same folks? Isn't it the very same thing? It's not about your geographic location, it's about your mentality. Even though you move from one area from point A to point B, you still perpetrate the same thing, right? Now, see a man, we're threatening to chop up the man, right? He moves from that country and come to another country, living a different life, and I'm saying this because we always blame it on poverty too, right? No, you're living another type of life, right? You're not as poor as you were before. You're probably not even poor anymore. You live a regular life like normal people. But yet still, you go out and you have an altercation with somebody, confrontation with somebody, and automatically your resort is back to the violence, right? We do have a violence problem, and we have to accept it and admit it. Nancy says the social and economical status has a big impact on the way people react. A lot of pedophile behavior is happening behind closed doors, and it manifests in all kinds of different ways. So true. So true. So true. Multiple problems. The economic issue is one. Though I am not one that thinks that poverty, people say poverty is the root of crime. Poverty does contribute to crime. It contributes to crime. But I can't blame just the poverty vibes. You know what I mean? I can't blame just the poverty vibes. Because a lot of people commit crimes, it takes them out of poverty, but they never leave crime, right? They still commit the crime. And we'll say, hey, we're committing the crime because my children have to eat. But yet still, after your children are fed, instead of using the bounty to put yourself in a position now to not have to do that anymore, you still do it. You know why? Because then you didn't have to go to 9 to 5. You didn't have to work all day. You just go commit some crime. And you have a Benz now, you have a Beamer now. That's how we live in, and we ain't got to work hard for it. So it is what it is. Not true. Am I wrong? So to blame it all on the economic effects too is a little. That's also us grasping and searching, reaching for a plausible excuse, right? Rick said the apple don't fall far from the tree. Kids live what they learn. That is gospel. Hensel, from the colonial era to now, Jamaica have had a violent culture, period. It's taught behavior, you're right, Hensel. They teach violence. Remember, back when we were in colonial days, we were colonized. Because at the end of the day, people don't want to hear this now. Black people are not violent innately by nature. Think of all the conquerors and the conquistadors and all the people who went around pillaging and stuff like that, conquering people and enslaving people. It wasn't black people. Right? But when we were colonized, it was introduced, it was taught, right? It was taught. And what was taught is to be violent against each other. So in other words, you are my chosen people, Those people over there are against us. go be violent toward them, because if not, then they're going to be a problem. You know what I mean? It's like you're still slaves and we're still treating you crappy, but we're going to treat you better than them so that you can go over there and inflict all kind of pain on them. And that's been trickle down, trickle down, trickle down, trickle down. But then, societally, we've glorified certain things. From the film, because we love talk about the musicians and the artists. We love talk about the musicians and the artists. I want to say we, I mean society, the media, the government, everything. The music, the music, the music, music, music. People don't talk about the film, because the film and the video games are, to me, way more damaging. The video games are desensitizing a lot of the youth because they are killing people and seeing blood and mire and everything as splash on a video game. But they can press reset. Right? And they're getting desensitized by these video games. Right? When it comes to the movies, all these killing movies and all them things will get filmed in your neighborhood, in your city and all that stuff. And nothing will come of it. You know why? Because revenue comes from that to the city and the government. Right? When an artist puts out music, it only benefits the artist and the people involved immediately in that record, whether it be a label or whomever. So your city and the municipalities and all them things don't get no money when a record gets put out. But if a film gets shot in their area, they get revenue from that. So that's half the reason too why people pay attention and speak about how impactful the music is, but turn a blind eye to the video game and the music and the movies, right? That's another show. Kiki, yes, they are. Teachers at school beating kids, kids hitting each other, parents at home abusing each other, including their kids. We abuse animals, many abuse the disabled and helpless people. It's engraved in our minds since childhood. Yeah, that is true. What I will say is this. I am not one to go say when enough children never get beaten, because guess what? Children need to be disciplined. And at the end of the day, abuse and discipline is two different things. Right? Abuse and discipline is two different things. Many people write about them, if they were getting some beatings, they wouldn't be who they are today. Right? But yes, in Jamaica, when them are beat, you getting beat, you getting tore up, right? And the unfortunate thing is, because in Jamaica it is so normalized and accepted, there is nobody looks at it as an overextension. Nobody looks at it as like, okay, you're overdoing it. It's just beating. Right? There's no levels to it. It doesn't move up to abuse. It's just kid I get beaten. Right? And on top of that too, sometimes it's the imbalance that's the problem. The people who are ready and eager and willing and love beating the kids are never this. They don't offer hugs and loves. So it's not like saying, boy, you beat the kid for do something wrong, but you show him love when him do something right. Or just show him love, but you beat him when him do something wrong. No, you beat him when him do something wrong. You're always speaking to that person in an aggressive tone. There's no love there. So what's being nurtured is somebody colder than you, right? And how you can tell is because when that person grows up and becomes a man and strong enough and big enough, then he has no fear of being aggressive toward his elders, somebody older, because he's mad at the elder, he's mad at him father, he's mad at grandpa. And when him see older men, he sees daddy and he sees grandpa, and him have no problem being violent towards them, because that's what you nurtured. What up, Julianne? How you doing? So good to see you. Right? Polly said there's a tune. Chuck Fender said, you catch them, I like them. You're so true. So true, so true, so true. But we've got to do better. We've got to do better. All right? We look at certain things as entertainment when it really is not. All right? Let's see here. Hey, Jackie. Princess Myra, wagwan. Nancy, some behavior are learned. No matter where we move, we carry it with us. So true. Peter, absolutely right. Everybody contributes. Politicians, police, singers. Back in the day, you would have to figure out the lyrics of songs. Boy, I mean, I tell you what, I make that one that slide. You understand me? But here's the dealie. I got to roll. I want to say thank y'all so much for rocking with us today, man. It's just an hour show. We're going to get back to it. We'll get back to it, let's say tomorrow. Same place, same time. And, oh, by the way, it's going to be less and less music just because, we can't do as much music as we want to do. However, for those people who always say, G. Cole, I missed the radio show, right? They don't get to catch the radio show, because I'm realizing right now that I love radio. I like listening to podcasts and stuff like that. But we got a lot of folks who, if them now watch the video, them not into it, and I can't, they don't want to hear nothing. They want to see it. So here's the deal. Go to Twitch, because what I'm going to do now is whenever I'm on radio, I'm going to live stream it on Twitch. So you'll be able to hear all your favorite music. You'll be able to interact. You'll do all that stuff on there uninterrupted. So go to Twitch, get the app, or just twitch.com and type in Homegrown with G. Cole. Follow me there, and I'll let you know when we're on. That's radio. All right? So again, go over to Twitch and do that. Listen, I appreciate y'all big time. I'm going to slide out here with this tune right here, and I'll see you next time. All right? When it says, we as a people of Jamaica culture lack the ability to reason and communicate with each other without ego or bravado. Do we lack the ability to do it because don't we consider ourselves some of the brightest and the most progressive in the world? There's something. Right about now, we always say, hey, Jamaicans are the smartest, the brightest, the strongest, we do the best. Cultural indoctrination, we need to fix it. We gotta do something. All right? We gotta do something. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate y'all big time, man.